7 months after being arrested, Jamie faces a new session with psychologist Bryony, who tries to understand his mind and his past. What begins as a calm conversation soon turns into outbursts of anger, intimate revelations, and growing tension. Between confrontations and silences, the truth seems harder than ever to reach. The last episode of the series begins with Eddie at home, taking care of his life. He seems worried about his son's situation. Manda is also at home and preparing breakfast for Eddie's birthday. They talk and smile even in the face of so many problems. Eddie goes to open the letters he received for his birthday. His whole family sent their regards. At that moment, Lisa enters the living room agitated and calls Eddie. Something happened to their van. When they get outside, the van had been graffitied with the word pervert, probably by Jamie's haters. Eddie asks Manda to call the police. Meanwhile, he reassures his daughter seconds before going inside to get soap and water to try to clean the van. Manda is on the line with the police reporting what happened. Eddie says it must have happened after 8 p.m. She goes to the van and tells the police what is written and asks Lisa to take pictures so she can send them to the police. Manda goes in and talks to Eddie. She is nervous, but he asks her to calm down and think about Lisa. Manda doesn't like Eddie telling her what to do and they start arguing. They talk about Jamie and how his trial will happen in 1 month. Eddie says that everything will be fine because Jamie will be protected and so will they. Manda insists and suggests moving and asking her mother for help to apply for a job for Eddie, but when she says this, Eddie gets angry and says that he doesn't need Manda's mother to work and that he has everything under control. As he leaves the kitchen, Eddie notices that Lisa was on the stairs listening to the argument between the two, but he doesn't have time for that and goes to clean the van. Lisa goes up to her room and Manda follows her. She asks if her daughter has already sent the pictures by email and she says yes. Lisa asks if Eddie is okay and Manda says he is fine, he just needs some time. Lisa is confused and doesn't understand the reason for the graffiti, not with that word. And her father wasn't the reason. Everything is so confusing and complicated. No one knows exactly how to deal with the situation. Eddie scrubs the van as he promised, but the paint isn't coming off. Eddie is bothered by the neighbors who watch everything but don't help at all. At that moment 2 teenagers on bikes pass by and shout, "Scrub, pervert!" Eddie runs after them, but can't catch them. He shouts, but they don't respond. Eddie goes back inside the house and tells Manda that they need to go out and go to a store to buy something to remove the paint. Manda and Lisa don't want to go, they want to stay home, but Eddie convinces them to go. After all, it could be dangerous to be alone. They get in the van and leave. Eddie starts a conversation with his family and asks Lisa to put on some music. He also says that when they get back from the store, they're going to go for a walk, maybe go to the movies. After all, it's still Eddie's birthday, even with all this. But Manda demands the special breakfast that they haven't had yet because of the confusion. They talk about various subjects on the way, and Manda tells her about the school dance with Eddie. She tells him that he was wearing a pink wig and how he danced to one of his favorite bands. She tells him about the moment when he slipped and fell face down on the floor. That was the night of their first kiss. They arrive at the store. While Manda and Lisa go shopping, Eddie goes to a salesman and asks for something to remove graffiti from his van. The guy takes him to another salesman who is more experienced in the subject. The salesman recommends a hose and specific products and takes Eddie to a section, but Eddie isn't confident that the paint will come off and asks the salesman to show him where the paint section is so he can buy some blue paint. The salesman tries to make conversation with Eddie and talks to him. At that moment, the salesman recognizes Eddie, but Eddie just wants the paint so he can leave. The salesman takes Eddie to the paint section, but before he does, he says that he is on Jamie's side and that he doesn't believe the police's version of events. He says that there are many bones in the place where the girl was stabbed and it would be very difficult for a 13-year-old boy to have that much strength. He also says in a low voice that he saw the pictures of the girl, at which point Eddie cuts him off and asks for the paint. The boy hands him the paint and leaves. Eddie is extremely tense and angry. He goes to the cashier with the paint. Lisa talks to him, but he doesn't hear anything around him until he gets to the cashier. He seems to calm down a little, but as soon as he leaves, he recognizes from afar the boys who showed up on their bikes at his house earlier. Eddie doesn't think twice about running after them and grabs one of them by the collar. They admit that they were the ones who spray painted the van, but it was all a joke. Eddie threatens to beat them up if they come near his house again and throws the boy's bike. At this point, Eddie is a nervous wreck. He grabs a screwdriver, opens the can of paint and throws it at the van on top of the graffiti. He asks his family to get in the van so they can leave. Eddie argues with the store's security guard and everyone around watches in horror as Eddie gets in the van and leaves. Manda and Lisa don't know what to say and everyone is silent. Eddie drives for a long time without anyone saying a word. At that moment Eddie's phone rings and Lisa answers. It's Jamie. The boy called to wish his father a happy birthday. One of the cards Eddie received earlier was from Jamie. Eddie compliments the drawing and talks to his son. Jamie tells him how his detention has been. Eddie tells him how his day has been, but doesn't go into details. Jamie takes advantage of the call to tell his father that with the trial coming up, he has had second thoughts and is going to change his testimony. Eddie is speechless while driving and can only listen, just like the rest of his family. Jamie decides that he will plead guilty to the charges. At that moment his mother and sister talk to him on the phone. He thought that only Eddie was listening, but he talks to them too. Jamie needs to end the conversation because his time is running out, but before the call ends, he apologizes to his father. The news shook Jamie's family even more, making everything even sadder and more complicated than it already was. Any hope they still had that Jamie would be acquitted went down the drain. Manda cries with sadness when she enters the house and goes straight up to her room. When she gets there, Eddie is getting dressed. He put on his best clothes so that they could go out and take a walk like Eddie promised, but Manda tells them to forget it. There was no mood to go out, even if it was for Eddie's birthday. He agrees and they sit down to talk about their son. Manda says that this must have taken a weight off Jamie's shoulders and that Eddie should let his feelings out instead of keeping them bottled up. What happened earlier is not like Eddie. Manda assumes that maybe the best thing for everyone would be for Jamie to plead guilty, and she knows that Eddie thinks the same. Eddie decides to vent. He says that when he saw Jamie's video he didn't want to believe it. Manda goes on to say that Jamie would come home and go straight to the computer and stay up until the early hours of the morning. Eddie says that it's not her fault, that she couldn't control it. Manda thinks that all of this is their fault, because if they had realized something earlier, none of this would be happening. Eddie tells how his father used to beat him when he was little and that he promised never to do that to his children, because he wanted to be better than his father, but maybe he failed. He tells how it was when he took Jamie to soccer, even though the boy wasn't very good at it. The other parents would laugh at Jamie, but Eddie would stay there by his side, but at the same time, Jamie would look at him and Eddie couldn't look back. He also enrolled him in the box, but nothing came of it. Just like these memories, Eddie and Manda remember several other memories. They come to the conclusion that they are good parents and that none of this is their fault, because they had no way of knowing what would happen. Eddie tells Manda that Jamie kept repeating over and over that it wasn't him. And that's when he saw the video. Nothing made sense. At that moment Lisa enters the room and she is dressed in her best clothes and wearing makeup. She thought her father deserved this. Lisa says she knew the boys who painted the van. But they are not a danger. She asks them not to move. Moving might be easier at first, but later everything would go back to being chaotic. Manda suggests that they cancel the movie and stay home and enjoy their family. All of this happened in one morning, when Eddie and his family haven't even had breakfast yet. Manda goes downstairs to make coffee, but Eddie goes to Jamie's room. He looks around, remembering the good times with his son. This moves him and finally Eddie breaks down and cries about everything that has been happening. If this episode touched you in any way, leave a like, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to continue following stories as intense as this one. Thanks for watching, and until next time.